Have you ever heard a story where someone's greatest victory was the very thing that led to their complete downfall? It sounds like a paradox, right? But it's the true story of a king from ancient Judah, King Amaziah. So let's dive into this wild and, honestly, cautionary tale.
And that's really the big question we're going to be looking at here. You know, we all chase success. We think of it as the ultimate win. But the story of Amaziah is this really powerful reminder that success, when it gets mixed with pride, can turn into a poison that's way more deadly than any loss.
All right, so let's set the stage and meet our guy, King Amaziah. He takes the throne after his father, King Joash, and right from the get-go, the Bible points out this massive internal conflict, like a fatal flaw baked right into his character.
And this, right here, is the puzzle of King Amaziah. On the surface, he looked the part. He did the right things, he followed God's law, but the text adds this crucial little phrase, but not with a loyal heart. His heart just wasn't fully in it. It was this incomplete commitment to God, and that one little crack, that divided loyalty, is basically the seed for the entire tragedy that's about to unfold.
And you know, at first things looked pretty promising. He brought his father's assassins to justice, which, okay, everyone expected him to do, but then he did something that was totally countercultural. He spared their children. Now, the normal practice back then was to wipe out the entire bloodline just to be safe, but Amaziah actually followed the specific law of Moses, which forbade it. This proves he knew what God wanted and he was totally capable of doing it.
Sooner or later, every leader faces that one moment. You know, that one test that really defines everything. For Amaziah, it came during his first big military campaign against the neighboring nation of Edom. This was it. This was where his faith was about to be put to the ultimate test.
And listen, his plan made perfect sense from a military perspective. He gathers this massive army from his own kingdom, Judah, but to really seal the deal, he hires 100,000 battle-hardened mercenaries from the northern kingdom of Israel. Pays them a fortune in silver. It's a solid, logical plan. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, this is what goes wrong. A prophet, a man of God, shows up out of nowhere and just throws a wrench in the whole operation. He says, "King, you have to send those hired soldiers home. The Lord is not with them." The message couldn't be clearer. If you go into battle with these guys, you're not just fighting Edom, you're fighting against God himself, the only one who actually has the power to give you the victory.
And this is where the story just gets so human, so relatable. What's Amaziah's first reaction? It's not about theology or military strategy. It's about the money. He basically says, yeah, but what about the cash? I already paid them. He's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Obey God or lose a massive investment. But the prophet's answer is just incredible. He completely reframes the problem. He says, this isn't about losing money, this is about trusting God's ability to provide. He's essentially telling him, don't worry about the cost of obedience. God can give you back way more than you're giving up. It's a straight-up test of whether he trusts God's provision.
And believe it or not, he does it. He sends the 100,000 mercenaries packing. This is the absolute high point of his entire reign. It's the moment he chooses to trust God over his own logic and his own wallet. He actually listens, and he obeys.
And guess what? His obedience works. He gets a huge victory just like the prophet said he would. But this is where the story takes such a bizarre, dark turn. The very success he got because of his faith is the thing that ends up completely corrupting him.
I mean, the victory was just staggering, and it was a direct result of trusting God. Without those mercenaries, his own army takes down 20,000 Edomites. It was a complete and total God-given win. He had every reason in the world to be on his knees thanking the God who just handed him this incredible victory.
But he doesn't do that. Instead, he does this. It's almost hard to believe. He takes the idols of the people God just helped him conquer, the same idols that were completely powerless to save their own people, and he starts worshiping them. It's just mind-boggling. This is the moment that divided heart of his finally shatters and it goes completely the wrong way.
Now, God is merciful, so he sends another prophet to try and talk some sense into him. And the prophet's question is just dripping with perfect, simple logic. He asks, why on earth would you worship gods that couldn't even save their own people from you? It's such a cutting question because it just exposes how utterly foolish his actions are. But look at how Amaziah responds this time. All that humility he showed the first prophet, gone. It's been replaced with pure, unfiltered arrogance. He sneers, "Who made you my advisor?" And then he threatens to kill God's messenger. His victory didn't fill him with gratitude. It filled him with this idea that he was untouchable, that he was above correction.
So now, having rejected God's warning, Amaziah's pride just spins completely out of control. It pushes him to start a totally pointless, arrogant, and, in the end, devastating war.
So, feeling pretty good about himself after beating Edom, Amaziah picks a fight with the king of Israel. And the king of Israel, Joash, sends back this absolutely brilliant little story. He's basically saying, "You're a thistle, a tiny prickly weed, and you think you can challenge me, a mighty cedar of Lebanon. A wild animal is just going to walk by and crush you without even noticing. The message is clear: stay home. You are way out of your league."
But Amaziah doesn't listen. And the scripture gives us this really crucial insight here. It says his refusal to listen came from God. Now, that doesn't mean God made him do it. It means that because Amaziah had already turned to idols and rejected God's correction, God just let him go. He allowed him to walk right into the train wreck that his own pride had created. It was judgment in the form of letting him have his own way.
And the results were an absolute catastrophe, a total humiliation, not just for him, but for all of Judah. His army was crushed, he was taken prisoner, a huge part of Jerusalem's protective wall was torn down, and the treasures from God's own temple were looted and carried off. His personal pride led directly to a national disaster.
So, let's wrap this up. The last chapter of Amaziah's life is just a grim picture of the long-term consequences that started with that little crack in his heart all those years ago.
After that humiliating defeat, he actually lived for another 15 years. But it was a life without any real power or respect. He was despised by his own people. Things got so bad that a conspiracy formed against him right in his own capital, and he had to flee for his life. But they hunted him down and assassinated him. He met the same violent end as his father.
And that brings us right back to the very beginning, doesn't it? The king who did all the right things on the outside, but didn't have a truly loyal heart on the inside. He reaped what he sowed. His end was betrayal and disgrace, the direct result of that inner division.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty big question to think about for ourselves. I mean, this is an ancient story, but that razor-thin line between healthy, God-given confidence and a destructive pride that makes us deaf to correction, well, that's something we all have to deal with. So where is that line for you? And how do we make sure that our biggest wins don't become the very thing that takes us down?